Assistant Superintendent's report.
All right, well, I have a lot to report out on tonight, so bear with me.
Kylie's not here, so Kristen's taking over.
So the report tonight will begin by providing financial information for the month of October. This represents a third of the fiscal year. So on board book page 6, there's a monthly summary report. The total revenue for the month was $531,869, with 40% coming from real estate taxes and CPPRT, or corporate personal property replacement tax. 27% came from evidence-based funding, which is our state funding, and 24% came from federal reimbursement, specifically IDEA, which is related to special education, and Perkins. The total expenditures for the month were $1,835,832, with 80% of those expenditures going towards salary and benefits and 6% towards capital projects. We did have some reimbursements in both revenue and expenditure, so I excluded that from the graphical representation to try to simplify things a little bit. When you're looking at the revenue, where you'll see the local revenue, why that was negative is because we transferred some fees out to primarily our activity accounts for testing, AP testing, as well as yearbook and activity fees. And for expenditures, there was a credit from LASI and purchase services, which I'll go over in just a minute.
So, quick question, just to understand and for the people watching at home. This is available on the board book online. This is a public document, correct?
It becomes a public document when we post the minutes, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that. 'Cause I think you have a nice, I think the pie chart that's been added kind of explains things in a nice fashion, and some of the accompanying slides support some of the information here.
Thank you.
Sorry to get
That's
you
okay.
Your rhythm there.
On board book page 7 begins our monthly financial statements, and on page 7 you can see the current fund balance for our operating funds is roughly $17.7 million, and this does include the $2.9 million that is earmarked for the field project in working cash. So excluding that money, we have a balance of roughly $14.8 million, and in my opinion this balance is critical as we don't really receive a large revenue source again until March when we receive the next wave of property tax. So it's important that we have this surplus to help cover our expenditures in the meantime.
But our fund balance is 17 now.
And
So
then,
that will go down again at the end of November as we use some of that money to pay off the bills, and then it will go back up in March when we start to receive taxes.
yeah, it'll continue to go down November, December, January, February, correct. And that includes the money that's earmarked for the field project as well.
And our March revenue tends to be lower, right? Because the second tax installment is smaller. Right,
Is it the
so
55-45, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it?
I don't know the exact.
Something like that.
Roughly, yeah.
Something like
So
that.
Kristen, like roughly, if all of our revenue is received that we're projecting through our levy and tax collection and state payments, we roughly have about $15 million in the bank.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's also important to note that you need to exclude, or you should exclude the $6.5 million in debt service and life safety accounts because those are for very specific purposes, and that's why they're not included in the operating fund category. So moving on page 8, the summary of revenues shows that the district has received 43% of our revenue for the year, and this amount is very equivalent to last fiscal year at this time, which was 44%. On page 9, there's a summary of expenditures, which shows that the district has spent 32% of the budgeted expenditures for this year. Given that we're a third of the way through the fiscal year, we're right on track, and we're very similar to last fiscal year at this time. On board book page 10, the statement of revenues and expenditures report is there for the month of October. And this report lists all of our revenue and expenditure accounts and then provides a summary of the expenditures or revenues for the month, as well as compares budget to actual. So there are 2 questions submitted regarding this report. The first is on page 15 of board book. There's a question about summer school expenses, which is towards the top quarter of the page. And we are still paying them out, and that is because there was a summer camp and the athletic trainers that were overlooked and were not paid out for their summer time. So we were paying them out. This account is used for summer athletics and summer school. We inherited the account name, and it's on my list to change for next year, so it is more accurate of what we're using that account for. And then also on board book page 17, on the bottom of the page, this was there was a question submitted about the purchase service with LADSI. LADSI is our special education cooperative, and this summer LADSI, like they do every summer, but LADSI requested their member districts pay their invoice in full for the year. And so we did. The problem was us, along with many schools, didn't have their IDEA grant approved yet. And so you can't spend some of your grant funds until your grant is approved. So what LADSI had to do was issue refunds to all of their member districts for just the portion of which grant funds were expended. And so that's our refund, and then next month we're going to pay that back to LADSI. So it's kind of just a formality with a lot of extra paperwork. But that's why there's a big credit.
So are they going to do that again next year? Ask for payment in full, or do we have some wiggle room here?
We'll have some wiggle room. Part of the problem was this was the first year the state rolled out the consolidated district plan, which was a new grant application that was trying to consolidate things, but it kind of complicated things at the state level because you had to have multiple people review it and everyone was submitting it at the same time, and there was kind of a backlog. So hopefully kinks will be worked out on both ends.
Superintendents from each district that are a part of LADSI Cooperative sit on directing board, so that was something we discussed, like, it's cleaner than if we submitted in August or September our bill instead of having to do it this way. So there was some discussion on that, and there will be some flexibility established.
Just another example of how the state is just right on top of everything.
And then finally, in this portion of my report, the student activity account summary, which I always report out on for the month of October. It begins on board book page 21. Just as a reminder, negative account balances represent positive fund balances, so it's the reverse for the activity accounts. And then I wanted to call your attention, the testing account 6010 increased by roughly $123,000 this month, and that was where the local funds primarily were transferred into this account. In May and June, we'll pay a huge bill to College Board for all of the AP tests. Each test is $95. So we'll pay that test fee, and then it also covers testing supplies and AP test proctors we pay out of this account. So this account balance is going to remain pretty large for the next several months until we get that big bill from College Board in May or June. Are there any questions before I go into the staffing and enrollment summary for projections?